Hi, and welcome everyone to Whole Soul School and Foundation's Fireside Chats for August 2022. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive life coach, and the host of our Fireside Chats podcast series. And I'm here today with Lacy Frazer, who is a clinical psychologist by training and a practicing life coach and consciousness educator. We want to welcome our listeners who are joining us. Our mission here at Whole Soul School and Foundation is to increase self-awareness, personal empowerment, conscious communication, transformation, and freedom in people worldwide through our Good Vibes broadcasting and consciousness teachings. We believe that these conversations are the education, and we thank you for joining us. And if you are inspired by our Good Vibes broadcasts and want to pay it forward, we invite you to make a donation through our website at wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. You can also support our mission and vision by visiting our shop on bonfire.com and purchasing some great designs on a variety of apparel. I also want to take a moment to thank our generous donors who support our Good Vibes broadcasting mission of empowering, inspiring, and educating people in the ways of personal change and transformation, rising in the hero's journey, and embracing greater mind, body, spirit, fitness, and awareness in daily life. We very much appreciate our supporters, and we thank you for adding your positive energy to the work that we do. And so without further ado, I want to welcome everyone, and I want to welcome you, Lacy. Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to be here.
Right? And I wanted to start us off by sharing something today that we're going to be focusing on. You know, many of our podcasts center around the concepts of change and transformation.
Right.
For they are central to our mission and purpose here at Whole Soul School and Foundation. And today we wanted to focus on a particular aspect of change and transformation that doesn't always get a lot of attention. But it is a powerful awareness that warrants a spotlight right now. And that is, how do we find ways to feel good in the gap between where we are presently in our lives and where we want to be? We often talk about more active stages of the hero's journey, where the hero seems to be on the move to rise up and through different tasks and different tests of their mastery, right? Their heroic soul's journey. What happens when you are in a phase of your life where you are where you presently are, and you are keenly aware that you are not where you want to be yet? How can people find ways to bloom where they are planted, so to speak, to experience more peace in the beingness of the journey, of just right where they are, right? It's a good question.
Yeah, and you know, we've talked about it kind of in different ways from different angles, this concept of being present, right? Mm-hmm. Being present in our life, really having an understanding that our past is our past. And that we've got a direction where we feel like we're headed.
Right.
Right. But I think it's really important to revisit this notion of this thing called the gap. You know, there's this sort of space where we are where we are. We're not quite yet where we're going.
Right.
And how do so many people struggle and suffer in life because they think they're missing their past somehow, or they're yearning for something different. And so kind of the suffering that so many people go through is because they are living in this gap, this in-between place. And the question becomes, how do you teach people, how do you show people that gap is purposeful, right?
Wow.
It's purposeful. It's sort of the same notion as the pregnant pause, so to speak.
Right.
You know? And I really believe that finding ways to feel good in that gap, in that space, is critical to alleviate some of the suffering and help us get more in touch with ourselves and where we're going by being present in the gap.
Well, isn't that the challenge that most people face? Like we hear it in a lot of teachings, in a lot of religions. You know, there's this call to cultivate presence in the present moment, right? And I
Right.
think the gap, in a way, as you just described that, Lacy, I know we have things, we're going to break this down for people today a little bit, but maybe in the bigger picture view, we are talking about time. There is this sense of past, present, future, and the ego loves to be anywhere else but the present. And when you say there's suffering, it's because we are anywhere else but the present
Right.
moment, because the
Exactly.
present moment is where our higher presence, our higher self, our deeper awareness lives, is in the present moment. And the ego is always spending time everywhere else but the present moment. That's where it doesn't have the skills. So the part of the reason and the rub that people struggle in that the dissonance between those three things, past, present, future, is because our culture doesn't support us necessarily to embrace the present moment and embrace the power of the present moment. So our ego is constantly conditioned to be looking outside of ourselves and looking into different timelines instead of right where you are.
Right.
Right. And that could be a way of explaining and expressing and illustrating this gap. But we all know those feelings if you're in a job that you don't want to be in. We're going to give examples of some of this, but I just want to illustrate it this way for now. We all know aspects of our lives that were here in point A, and we were wishing that we were somewhere in point B or C or D, right? And there's the rub, because when we're learning how to, this whole concept of feeling good in this gap, which we could translate into feeling good in the present moment, right? Feeling good where you are. And what are the ways, like you were going to talk about?
Yeah, well, if I can jump in here, Marie, I think one of the most powerful ways to help people learn, understand, and drop into a deeper concept, such as feeling good in the gap, is to illustrate its contrast. So oftentimes by illustrating through contrast, which would be feeling bad in the gap, right? We can then launch into what it would feel like to feel good in the gap. Right. So I'd love to kind of open up with a little bit of what does it feel like to feel bad in this gap? What is that suffering? What is that struggle? And I think it ties into when you were talking about timeline and past, present, future. We, in some ways, a lot of the tension, frustration, struggle, and suffering inside of us is because somehow psychologically and emotionally, we are attached or tethered to our past or our future, right? Energetically and emotionally and with our thoughts. So we've talked about this a little bit before. If I'm attached to my past and I've got regrets and I've got resentments and I've got longings or I've got nostalgia, then perhaps in my present, I experience symptoms of depression. And if I am attached to the future and I'm worrying about what I'm doing next and I'm wondering how I'm going to pay that bill and I'm a catastrophic thinker and I'm a worrier about what's next, now in my present, I've got symptoms of anxiety, right? So if we could learn to be okay in the present, in the gap in between where I am now and where I'm going, that is the answer to end or alleviate some of this suffering. So let's look a little bit at what feeling sort of bad in this gap is,
Right.
As a contrast to the feeling good. So for instance, somebody who's, again, we're talking about this gap between where I am now and where I'm going. So if I'm not happy in this gap, chances are I might be in the process of chasing where I want to be, right?
Right.
So I'm spending all my time kind of focusing on that thing in the future, the who I want to be, the where I want to be. Why isn't this happening fast enough, And I'm sort of chasing that. And while I'm chasing that, what's happening? I'm missing a ton of what's happening now.
Right.
Right? Because my focus, I'm distracted and I'm focused in on something that's got my eye, and I'm missing all the things that I'm passing by on my forward movement.
Right. Right.
So that's one way I could be miserable in the gap. I'm just so focused on where I'm going that I'm missing what's happening now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that,
Yeah, I think so, especially nowadays.
right?
I think somebody can feel bad in the gap when they are constantly reminding themselves of where they're not.
Right.
Right? So whether it's I'm not in the past or I'm not where I want to go, I can't get there. Why can't I get there? I'm trying so hard. All of these things lead to a lot of self-judgment.
Right. I can't get there and I'm just not enough. I may not have enough to get there.
Right.
Right.
I don't have what it takes. Or,
Right.
I'm why aren't I there yet? Why aren't I there yet? Why aren't I there yet? And that can lead to a lot of frustration and a lot of, I think, more sort of internalized, it could be internalized shame, it could be internalized judgment. And that's a big source of suffering
Right.
inside of us as humans,
Yeah.
And then I think sometimes there is a fear of failure. People again are miserable in this gap, in the space between where they are and where they're going, because they're kind of paralyzed. They're paralyzed by fear. They're paralyzed by fear of failure, fear of rejection. If I keep taking steps forward, then and I get rejected or it doesn't work out, or then I'm going to get in the mindset of maybe I can't get there.
Right.
So spinning my wheels, fear of rejection, fear of not making it. And so I might as well just not do anything.
Right.
Okay. And then I was thinking also about just, there are a lot of people who are in the gap who are constantly thinking about what's the next thing I need to do to get there.
Right.
And they're very preoccupied with the doing. Mm-hmm. And the doing creates a lot of, can create a lot of frustration and tension and misery while they're in the gap. Because again, they're so focused on the doing, they're missing the whole concept of the being.
Right. Right.
And maybe the last thing that I've been thinking about with respect to kind of feeling bad in the gap is a sense of closed-mindedness that's often governed by the fear of moving forward. So the fear of failure. When we can be in the present moment and we can open up to the learning in the present moment, and I think we'll move into a different discussion or a different higher layer of this conversation. But at least at this point, I think that some people experience that gap between where I am now and where I'm going almost like a box.
Right.
That they can't seem to find their way out of.
Right.
And whether we call that closed-mindedness or it's a box that exacerbates a sense of closed-mindedness, or whether it's a literal, like I can't move beyond my present for whatever reason. And then that facilitates just continued negative thinking. I can't, I won't, I shouldn't, it's impossible. A lot of limited thinking that keeps them where they are in the gap.
Right. Right.
So all of these things are sort of emotional, energetic, and psychological ways, I think, that people can feel bad. They can feel yucky. They can feel stuck,
Right.
in this gap.
Right.
And I think we want to move. Obviously, you opened us up with wanting to move into a place of, well, how can we see this gap as rich, fertile ground for learning and growing?
Well, it's a shift in perspective. I mean, that's what we always talk about, right? And perception is everything. And so the lenses through we look at, when I just listened to you sharing all those examples, a lot of us can relate to having felt that or experienced that, or we witness people around us living this way, right? And oftentimes it is like the same scenario, but seen through different lenses. It's a whole different life. It's a whole different experience. And I think there's a lot of people in the world craving this shift, but if they're in those boxes, they may never let in the energy of that shift. But until you bounce into a conversation like this, or you pick up a book, or you watch a movie, or something triggers an awareness like, I could look at that a different way.
Marie, can I just jump in really quick here? Sometimes things kind of come through me, and I'll forget it if I don't jump in. And I didn't mention this, but one way that a lot of people feel bad in the gap is impatience. And I know this. I know this very personally. I know there have been times in my life, and even now, I have that where I want to be and that who I want to be. Mm-hmm. I can feel it out there. I can see it out there. I can visualize it out there. And I know that there's a timing to it. And at the same time, I can get very impatient because I want to be there. I want to be doing those things now. But it's not maybe time for those things now. In other areas of my life, it's not the timeline has not synced up for it to be naturally where I am right now, if that makes sense. And I think that impatience can really get in our way, and it can sort of fester and contribute to a lot of frustration. And that can kind of come out and get projected out into the world. And we have to be self-aware enough to know about all of these things that I mentioned. With respect to those negative feelings in the gap.
Well, and we know where our focus and attention goes, energy flows. And if we're in this experience, that we have any kind of awareness that we're in a gap like this, right? The awareness that came to me when you were talking, Lacy, is that we often put an increased importance, right? And when you have the lens of perception and you're living the experience of what we just described, of those kind of elements of feeling bad in the gap, if you put your attention on those emotions, right, which are interpretations that are coming from past or future experiences, there's the impatience that comes through that, right? Because you've put I would use the language, you put your vibrational accent mark. You're energetically accenting, you're highlighting, you're giving more power to where you are right now and what you don't have.
Yes.
Which is taking you into the experience of a greater lack and not having enough, and I'll never get there and all those things. But that energy, when you talked about impatience, it really partners very well with increased importance. And when you're putting this increased importance onto something that takes you out of the present moment, you're going to feel these uncomfortable feelings.
Yes, beautifully said. Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, now that we talked about feeling bad, maybe we should talk about feeling good. What are the hallmarks and the characteristics of that?
Well, I think, to me, probably the biggest thing for me to say up front about what could have us, how could we move into a place of feeling good in this gap, is having the trust and the faith that we are exactly where we are meant to be in this moment. And that's it. That's a bigger kind of deeper, wider sort of feeling. Mm-hmm. So I think trusting and having faith that we're exactly where we are meant to be, and that we have trust and faith that the process is moving forward, and that things are happening inside of us that we can't even know or recognize, and that our world is shifting, like our literal world, but the world inside of us is shifting as well. And just having trust and faith of that, even if we can't see it, even if we can't feel it. So trust and faith is a big thing for me. Also, I think some more practical things that can help us feel better in the gap is the notion of appreciation for what is, for what is now.
Right.
It's appreciation for... It can be practical things like our home or our job or our income or our children or whatever means we have right now in our life, the resources that are in our life right now. It's appreciation for the relationships and friendships we have in our life, and not attaching to that anything needs to be any different.
Right.
So I think you and I have talked many times about how appreciation can really increase our vibration or increase the positive nature of our vibration in any now moment. appreciating a flower, appreciating anything in nature, appreciating blue sky, appreciating my warm bed at night, appreciation for the now and anything in the now will enhance our emotional experience in the gap. Really anytime, but we're talking about the gap today, right?
Right.
I also think that something that I've learned, a concept that I've learned that really has helped me a lot, and it sort of relates to something that alleviates the tension and frustration and impatience, is the notion of baby steps, embracing the small baby steps we take in our life every day to feel better. That could literally taking the dog for a walk. That could be, some small step towards a bigger goal, but not feeling like we've got to take on so much to keep us going forward, to get us where we want to be,
Right. Be here now.
It's just being here now, and it's taking baby steps and appreciating the baby steps and feeling the baby steps for what they are. And I think, and then I think basic things like cultivating beauty in the gap, engaging things that we enjoy while we're in this gap period of time. That could be gardening, that could be traveling or taking a class, increasing our knowledge base, organizing the house. For me, sometimes it's making lists. Just by making lists, I feel better, whether that's a grocery list or house chore list or a list that we need to do for the business or for my
But you're talking about being present in the list making.
Yes, 100%.
Right.
It's not about making a list for me to focus my attention on achieving, but it is being present. That's a good point. It's being present in making the list.
Almost it's a bridge of like allowing all those future things that you wish you were getting done, right? This anxiety, this anticipation or whatever. But if you can be present in the list making, it almost gives energy to those things so you can reduce that sense of increased importance that you're not there, that you haven't gotten them done yet. So again, if you can do conscious list making
Yes.
in a way where you're kind of calming the energy inside you of all the things you have to race to get to, if you could just slow down and take some breaths and you can do that, that can be a tool that makes you feel good versus making you feel worse in the gap.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for that clarification and just exclamation point behind that for sure. And I also think something that's helped me a lot too in this gap between where I am and where I think I want to be, or where I'm going is really being as self-aware as I can. In any given moment, there are opportunities to learn, to self-reflect in any given moment. I mean, in this conversation, in an hour before this conversation, and an hour after this conversation, there is always an opportunity to become more and more self-aware. And when I talk about that, I'm actually talking about being self-reflective in how I'm responding to my outer world. We've talked in our podcast before about the difference between reacting and responding. And I think using the gap to be self-reflective and practice ways to respond more responsibly and kindly to our outer world, as opposed to being so reactive. So really, this point is about being ever present in the gap to being self-reflective and self-aware. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think part of what complements what you were just saying is what I referenced before, this energy of blooming where you're planted. You're growing, right? You're being nurtured and you're expanding and you can grow where you're planted. And some people would resist feeling like they're planted somewhere, and that resistance and that reactive energy. And all of that engages, to me, the human ego and the mind. And the mind and the ego are the parts of us, while they're wonderful tools and they help us make choices and live our lives and take action steps. We need that. It's kind of though our egos have gone a little rogue, and they're used to having some battle, some tension, something to be striving for or to be wrestling. And there's a restlessness, I think, inside of our world right now. On the whole, I think we have become a society, we know about this kind of conversation, Lacy, about the more. It can be more stuff, but it can be more experiences, but it could be more degrees or more. And that's coming from a not enough. And I think in all of these things, if people aren't in the present moment, if they're not blooming where they're planted, if they're not in the state of beingness and finding these ways to appreciate right where you are, like you might walk your dog every day, but maybe you don't do it consciously. Right. And you might think walking the dog is on the list. It's on the to-do list.
Right.
So if we're plowing through lists, which is what the ego does, because the ego is never in the present moment, it's a different part of you that has to recognize that that's the blooming where you're planted, and knowing that. The way that this starts to feel good, that you are where you are, is when you start to relax all of those egos, self-judgments and criticisms and reactions. And it's like a vacuum that's summoning intention to give it its place and its role in our lives. So it's always magnetizing to itself something that it has to have conflict with, even if it's you. Right?
Right.
Your ego could have the biggest conflict with you. You're not wearing the right color. You don't look right today. You're
not thin enough.
You're not thin enough.
Right.
You don't have enough money.
You didn't exercise enough.
Exactly. And that's the ego. There will never be enough for the ego's needs for consumption and consumption of this kind of conflict and tension and dissonance inside us. It's why a lot of the major religions, or major spiritual teachings anyway, have some kind of exercise in mindfulness, have some kind of exercise in practicing a state of beingness and relaxing that busy mind. And I think one of the biggest ways we can start to learn to feel good in these gaps, in the gap, it's almost like the ego has you in its nice little trap. Because in the gap between where you are and where you think you want to be, it has, like, this is the wrong language probably, but it's like it's got a victim. It's got you, and it's got your full attention. And it can all day, every day tell you, yeah, you may want to get over here, but look, you didn't succeed in this, you didn't succeed in this, look how you look today, that's not going to work. Whatever the judgments that you uniquely have that rattle around your thinking and your consciousness throughout the day, there's no shortage of the ways that the ego can keep you stuck in all of its criticisms and in all of your patterns of self-judgment that come from your own past experiences, that come from your worries about the future experiences, but that also come from, I would say, like the collective consciousness of experience. Humans for centuries have lived with this ego, right? And I think many of us are realizing that, talk about spinning your wheels. Spinning your wheels with the ego informing how you feel about yourself and how you're thinking about the present moment is getting you nowhere, because all it's going to give you is the depression and the stress that you just talked about, and the anxiety.
Right.
What we're learning how to do is something that is kind of foreign. We kind of have these rusty gears. What would it be like if we didn't engage the ego's battle inside ourselves, that to make the future right, the past has to be wrong? Right? Or to make the past right, you have to make the future be wrong. But you can see you're flip-flopping in all those timelines inside your thinking. What if you were just now, and instead of thinking about the person in front of you, of you did this to me, you said this to me, you always do this, we always, all the ways that it brings up all the past records. And you can just be in the present moment and enjoy your own presence and this person or a dog or an animal or nature it's a whole different lens and way of showing up in the world when you're listening, when you're really present in the moment and you're allowing what new wants to create itself, that you allow this space. And that's the opposite of the closed-mindedness you talked about.
Right.
When you show up thinking you already know the present moment and it hasn't quite happened yet, but you've already decided how it's going to be, you brought the past into the present moment because you're already knowing how it already happened before, and then you're recreating that in the present moment, and it's just on perpetual repeat. And that's not a fun place to be in if you are in the gap between somewhere where you are and somewhere where you want to be, but you have the past on, you're just on a recording. It's just playing out, so you keep experiencing that, and then you feel like your future, where you want to go, is so far away because your past will never let you get there. Right?
Yes.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And I think we do need this language of the ego. We've learned this language. We've got Freud who came in here and helped name some of these things. But it wasn't just Freud who came up with this. This part of the human consciousness has been here for a long, long time. And I think we're learning more effective ways to relax the ego and not engage in that tug of war inside ourselves. We don't even have to battle ourselves. We just have to take a deep breath and even ask ourselves, what would it like to feel good in this moment? And if you're outside taking a walk or you're taking your dog, and you just make the decision that you're just going to be present in what your dog is showing you. You're just going to be present in what you see in nature instead of what you've seen in nature 1,000 times and you could care less because you got to get to the next task. It's a whole different way of walking your dog. It's a whole different way of being you in your day. But you could miss it if you're running around and your ego is running you as you run around.
Yeah, when you were talking, I was sort of envisioning the phrase, life is not a sprint, it's a marathon kind of phrase.
Right.
Because how conditioned we are to believe that life is a sprint. And when we get into the energy of the sprint, how exhausting it is, how attached we are to it, how frantic we get, how frenetic we get, right? And I don't even know that I want to ascribe to that it's a marathon either.
Well, it's like I think another phrase too, in addition, is like, it's not about the destination, it's the journey.
Right.
It's all about the journey, which then you can embrace the beingness in it.
Right.
But it's a perspective shift. You would have to consciously know that you are somebody who's sprinting through your life, that you are somebody who's so focused on the goal that you miss everything, that you miss the marrow of your life because you were so busy trying to get there that you were never here. Right? It's powerful. And sometimes we just need to pause, because even when we talk in the context of the hero's journey, there's this sense of they've got to go through this stage and this stage and this stage. And that gave us a language for a lot of where we journey through. It's a bigger picture perspective. But I think we would be remiss if we weren't saying to people, you're going to have pauses. You're going to have some still points. You're going to need to have these moments of integration. There are moments where it seems like you're not moving anywhere, but actually, if you're in a still point, if you're in a gap, I feel like that's the universe's way of, it's time for some integration. You've already learned some major things and some things that you just have been through. Did you really incorporate that? Did you really assimilate? Did it become you? Or is it still something outside of yourself that you're chasing that you don't realize you already learned, you just didn't integrate yet? Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes when we're in a gap between where we might be right now and we feel like we want to be, it could just be with our own dissonance. The gap could be us. The gap might not be anything else outside of ourselves. It could just be our own wrestling. And maybe the universe wants you in that gap, but really that still point, to slow down long enough for you to really receive the gifts of the lessons you've already been learning. You've already been through so much. Being here on this planet means that we're learning a great deal. Just being alive means that you're learning a tremendous amount. But when we have these more active phases of the journey where we might be dealing with fears or all kinds of things, right? Or big big Herculean tasks that we need to go through to grow our awareness, to become this authentic self. There's also these moments where we kind of need to pause and realize that our power point is in the present moment. And when we're so busy trying to get to some destination somewhere, we really do miss out on knowing ourselves at a deeper level. And we miss out on enjoying the company of ourselves. We miss out on enjoying being a companion to our own process and progress, and being our own best friend, right? Being our own companion in the journey, right? And that's when we can take a breath and we can at least invite the opportunity to live this way. It's amazing how quickly the wrestling inside us can just settle down, and the kinds of choices you make when you're not as restless, when you're not in the battle of judging yourself. Look, you just did this yesterday. You could do this tomorrow. What a mistake that would be. Like that conversation, it never ends with the ego because it's going to play the recording forever. We're the ones that have to take a breath in the present moment and say, you know what? I know you could be lamenting the past, and I know you might be afraid of the future, but right now I'm actually pretty okay. It's like a gorgeous day outside, and my dog's tail is wagging, and like the flowers are blooming this season, or oh my gosh, fall. I could just smell the energy of fall. It's right here. We're almost at the point of the change of seasons, and I can feel that. What a gift it is to feel time moving in the leaves on the trees and just be a part of that. What do you think about that, Lacy?
Well, as you were talking, energy sort of flooding, and I'm having all these visuals, and what came to me was a very practical kind of example of what we're talking about. So we recently moved our daughter to college, and moving her to college, of course, made me think about my experience of moving to college, and I remember move-in day really distinctly. And I remember thinking, gosh, I want this to be over with. Like, I want to be on the other side of this move-in day. I want everything unpacked. I want my room set up. I want to get to know my roommate. I want to be on the other side of that. And why did I want to be on the other side of that? Because I was uncomfortable. Like, I just didn't want to go through the blood, sweat, and tears maybe of the unpacking or the adjustment to meeting new people or meeting my roommate. I probably wanted to be on the other side of that because of the discomfort, the uncomfortable feelings that I felt like I was going to be facing. And so that's the example of like where I want to be, right? In this conversation, there's this gap called unpacking the car, called moving my boxes in and unpacking the boxes and setting up my room and meeting my roommate. I was kind of going through all of this as you were talking in my mind, right? And being present in the gap, this would be a great metaphor, and literal example of that. What would it be like? And maybe I'm also in this energy because kids all over the country are moving into college right now, right?
Or people relocate and they buy a whole other house and they have to learn a whole new town or city. And
we tend to want to be on the other side of these transitions versus embracing these transitions, versus being in the moment of these transitions.
Right.
So if I keep going with my feeling about myself moving into my own dorm room, it's like, I kind of look back and I think, wow, I sort of wish I took more time to be in the energy of enjoying unpacking every box, embracing the excitement of what was in each box that I had forgotten that I had packed. Right. And enjoying with my parent, who was helping me move in, the bonding that could have been, as we kind of joked and laughed about how I wanted to set up my room, or working with my roommate to say, do we want the coffee pot to go here or over here, and like you said, it's all perspective, it's all the approach, but we're really talking about what if we were willing to acknowledge the feelings of the discomfort, and then also at the same time we were willing to recognize them and embrace a new way, a new presence in that task, So I'm not sure if that's speaking 100% to this, but I just really felt it so strongly as I was reliving my own experience.
Right. Well, and in a nutshell, in a way, you can really describe the perfect scenario of just wanting it over and done with, just wanting to get beyond it. There's so many things that people go through in their lives that if they could just like skip that, it's almost like wanting to skip the step.
Right.
It's like we want to just leap over that and then get to the good stuff.
Oh, I have that, every day in session. People want to say, can you just give me the answer? Can you just give me the 5 steps?
Right.
Right? Can you just take me to that other side?
Right, because I want to feel better. But the true feeling better is where you get into the present moment. You unpack the boxes. You set up the room. You make the choices, but you're present in it. And it can be a task of dread, that's the ego. It must create the tension because that's where the ego lives, right? Or you can really enjoy the experience of whatever it is. Just say, I'm going to, and if you can become your own best company, that's what also people are learning how to do. They're learning how to be with themselves. They're learning how to enjoy themselves and say, like you said, where do I want the coffee pot? Where does the sun come in the room? Where do I want my bed or in orientation to the sun? Maybe I don't care where the bed is orienting to the sun. But all these choice points, you can dread them. You can have stress about them. You can want to get it over with about them. Or you can really say, let me just feel that for a minute. Like, where do I want my bed in this room? Where do I want to set up that lamp or whatever? And this is true. Like, this metaphor applies to anything. Anybody starting a new job, anybody knowing that they have this new experience that's coming, but they have to be present in the moment now that's going to lead them into a more fulfilled place to better meet this future experience that they're anticipating. The more we can be in the present moment, the more futures that we want will come into our now. The more we push at it, the more we have tension about it, the more that's when we see therapists. That's when we go to coaches, because really that's the problem we all have to solve. We have to learn how to be in the present moment. And these gaps in our lives, if they show up, whenever they show up, they're an opportunity for you to practice a skill that we've long needed and that our culture doesn't help us very much with. The culture and the conditioning and the programming of school and education, there's some movie I think called The Race to Nowhere. This racing that we do of trying to get, like working so hard to get somewhere that we miss the point.
Experience.
We miss the experience.
Right.
We're totally absent for, how many of us can look back on you used education. How many of us can look back on our college experiences and some things where you did graduate in 2 or 4 or 6 or however many years, right? But some things you will remember, but some things it's like a blur. Because you were so busy in that time, maybe you just actually weren't present.
Gosh, when you're saying that, it's just crazy because I had a conversation, I was trying to think of like one thing I could say to my daughter to one piece of advice, right, about going to college. And of course, there's a million pieces of advice as a parent that you want to give. And probably you and I gave along the way for the last year. But I wanted one piece of advice. And I said to myself, Lacy, what's the one thing that you want to share that's really important that you didn't know about or that you wish somebody had told you, right? This is what I said to myself.
Right.
And I of the millions of things I could have said, which often began with don't do this and don't do that, right? I said this. I said, be present in this experience. It's the only time you're going to be in this 4-year experience and I kind of said it within the context of my own. I wish I had been more present in my college experience. I wish I had enjoyed it more. I wish I had cultivated the deeper friendships and loved the now moments in those lacrosse games, And I mean, I think I did that periodically, but I look back and I have this feeling that I could have been way, way more present. And that was something that I said to her, and I felt.
And this comes from, and this all links to what we're talking about. Yeah. It all connects. But that's the life of no regrets. And the person that doesn't have regret is the person that has cultivated a sense of being where you are.
Yeah.
Right? And being your own best friend and being really present in the experience. And I would bring the senses into it, really sensorially experiencing every moment. And it is something that we have to cultivate because we're not taught this very much. It's not emphasized in our development, right? We don't see this unless you have a unique teacher along the way that becomes that mentor in your hero's journey that you can think back and say, oh, but I did. But not many people did have a mentor that was talking about consciously creating your life in kindergarten. It hasn't been part of our language. I believe it is important for it to become our language because we wouldn't have to have so much of the roles of therapists and people to unwind time. Why would we need to unwind time if we're present in every moment, creating it as we want it to be? Right?
Well, and I got to jump in here, and I don't know if this is going to take us in a hairpin turn, or if, but you just kind of tapped into an essence, which I felt as, what if there is no gap? So we started this off talking about a gap between where we are and where we think we're going or where we want to be. But what if there's no gap? I mean, what if it's just a continuous unfoldment of being?
Well, that's a very deep concept, Lacy Frazer. And that is kind of the mystery of life that people have been trying to unpack and uncover for centuries. But it is the invitation of our time, and with the amount of distractions and the amount of speed in our lives right now, right? Things are so fast, and there's so many things to do, and there's so many things we need to get to. It is the more rare heroic soul that may know that what if the gap isn't a gap, and what if I'm right where I'm meant to be, and what if the conversation I'm having with the person as I stepped out the door, somebody was about to knock on my door and we paused and stopped and had a conversation instead of I needed to race here and race there, or they made me late and then I had to. It's all perception. I had this fabulous conversation with this person today who crossed my path, and we had 10 minutes of a connection that I'm still thinking about at the end of my day, that I'm so glad we connected that way, right? It's a totally different perception than, okay, I'm late, sure, whatever, hurrying the conversation, then being in the irritation that something always gets in my way. I'm always late for everything I try and do, and then it never goes as I planned. Do you see the difference? Just being present. Right. And meeting what is. And I know that's really turning this whole paradigm, the way we live our lives, on its end. I'm not so sure that that's not what we need to be doing in our lives. It's a time for a consciousness shift. It's been a little bit of a runaway train of racing to nowhere, racing to all these places, only to look back over our life and wish I'd spent more time with my dog, wish I spent more time with my kids,
right.
wish I spent more time in the books that I always wanted to read, but I stacked on my nightstand table and never had time for. Really, if your life is that meaningful, you don't have time to do the things you would say you want to do, then be in the present moment and whatever it is that you seem to be enjoying. But if you're in the race somewhere to somewhere and you feel like you're here, but you're racing always to get somewhere else, and then you raced your whole life to look back and say, what did I really do? What did I really have? What was that all about for me? I want to live a life that maybe, towards my latter years, I'm saying I wanted to take a trip here and I went here. I wanted to experience friendship on this level and I experienced friendship on this level. I wanted to move to a new place and experience a place where I didn't know anybody. But a friend of mine says a stranger is family you haven't met yet, where no one is a stranger, where we begin to peel back the layers of the walls we place between ourselves and others, right? It's all these deeper things that really come out of a conversation like this. How can you feel good in the gap? You start to find meaning in everything that's happening in your life.
Yes, every moment.
Right? Even if you're struggling and saying, I feel lonely today. I feel separate
that's
today.
And that's really important. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's really important. We start to even appreciate the struggling.
Loneliness, the struggle.
The
exactly.
negative feeling. We start to appreciate it because it's telling us something. It's telling us, it's guiding us.
Well, and also this, we won't go there too far, but I'll just say that struggle isn't the real you. The part of you that struggles is the ego that can't reconcile time. It can't reconcile more of the spiritual experience. It's your spirit inside you that's okay with everything that is. It's the ego that will always be saying, that's not
Make
okay.
it wrong, yeah.
That it's judging. It's
Yeah.
just like caught in the trap inside itself of judging everything and everyone, including you. And when you can recognize the struggle, your ego is speaking. Because your soul is at peace. It's always in like an eternal now moment. And I know that might take some, like maybe that takes a spiritual practice. Maybe that takes a going and being with a group of people who might find that in yoga. They might find it in a group meditation. They might find it in reading a book and sitting out in nature somewhere. They might find it out on the water. You know, Lacy, you're somebody who knows that. When you go out on the water and you're just out in a boat and you do nothing, but you're integrating, you're not doing nothing.
Right.
You're doing so much more than nothing.
Right.
But it might appear to the ego, we're out here, you know, on the ocean or
You're not being productive.
You're not being productive. Think of all the things you could be doing and you made time to do this.
Right.
And you say, yes, we are making time to do this because this is everything. Right. And you will think back, and when you reflect on your life, even just the last year, you could say, oh, all those moments out on the water were spectacular. And there's no regret because your soul knows how great that was. Your ego might still say, I beg to differ. You missed this and this and this and this, and you missed all these deadlines, right? And that's something even for Whole Soul School and Foundation. Maybe we'll bring this around just to seed this in people's awareness. Whole Soul School and Foundation has a huge mission and purpose. It is finding its anchoring point. It's growing its little seedlings, right? But you and I are people who are also valuing more and more the present moment. And we are very present in what we're doing. In time, as this grows, and I believe Whole Soul School and Foundation is a major seed that is going to grow, and it may even have like a massive growth spurt, right? Where it goes from being very small to being much bigger. That's what I know is part of its destiny. But I don't lose sleep. I don't let my ego wrestle me and say, you put out only one podcast this month. How can you be a broadcasting company and you're only doing X, Y, and Z? The ego would speak like that. But the soul would know, I want to speak when I have something to say. I want to be present in what I'm sharing. I want to live the marrow of life, and I want to model the marrow of life. And I want to do that in a meaningful way. And the podcasts and the offerings will come as they come, and I trust the process. And I let go of deadlines, and I let go of shoulds, and I let go of, the constant, just monkey on your back that you never do enough. While we may not be putting out podcasts in the more public eye, there's a whole shifting going on the inner planes of Whole Soul School and Foundation that's very important for those next steps of growth. And you and I never even talked about that before we got on this podcast today. But perhaps Whole Soul School and Foundation could be described as being in a gap between where it now is and where it is destined to go. And we're trusting that gap, and we're letting it inform us, and we're relaxing the ego of like should, do, right? We haven't been living that way for some time personally, but it's starting to come into the way we create. We create when things are aligned to create them. We listen for the topic that wants to find us. We're allowing things to sift through, and maybe roles changing inside the organization, or the topics covered might shift. Maybe even the mission might slightly have some new tweaks, and getting more and more aligned with itself is, what does Good Vibes Broadcasting, what do the Fireside Chats want to say, right? What do all the different podcasts that we have here, what is their message? And if it's going to another level, I first need to know like its core root. I need to know the root of its message. So these are things that when you're in the gap, there's this marrow of the messages that if you could just be present with it, you're not suffering, you're listening. You're not suffering, you're learning. And you're not suffering, you're growing. And you are moving in the growth, even if it looks like you never took a step, right? The growth happens often at the energetic level first, and then it manifests into form. That's how things can be so powerful in the gap if you would meet it where it is.
Yes.
And then recognizing the voice of kind of the spirit or the soul of a project, the spirit or the soul of a person or a company or your own life. And the ego is saying, what have you put out lately? What are you doing? Why did you make that choice? That was a total mistake. Just listen to the quality of the messages coming through you. If you're stressed and not enough and there's a lack and you're failing, that isn't you. That isn't the heartbeat of your project. That is fear. And that can only come from the ego. And that is nowhere close to the present moment because it only lives in the past and it's only fearful of the future. Your soul will speak very, very clearly, very calmly, just like being out on the water, just like being in nature. All of us have had that experience where it's just beyond description. Something washes over us where everything is okay. Everything is perfect. And we're just like, wow, this is an amazing experience. That kind of experience you can have with the person who knocks on your door unexpectedly and you have a really amazing 5-minute connection, and that touches the rest of your day. And then you go on and seed that into other experiences where who you are, what you're with, what you're focused on, it has meaning. And if you don't like what you're focused on because the ego is driving that, then take a breath and connect in with your inner state of being, connect in with your higher self, connect in with the other messenger inside you that's leading you to peace and knowing that you're right where you're meant to be. And that's how I live in the gap. When I don't know about something, we have plenty of projects between the two of us. I've got books that I've never written. I've got films that I've never made. I've got musicals to write. I've got plenty of things that I know are in my future, right? But I'm actually letting it all marinate in my now. And then there are moments where I get the inspiration. Today's the day. Pick up the phone and call that person, right? Today's the day that they just crossed my path in the grocery store and we finally have that meeting that was always meant to be. But I wasn't closed-minded like you talked about in the feeling bad scenario. I was open-minded, maybe open-hearted. And that's where it comes and finds us. So many of us are in this position right now where our lives have been changed, maybe forever. Maybe we're not living in the same place we were living in. Maybe we're not thinking the same ways we were thinking. Maybe we've been triggered into fear and uncertainty, and we're kind of closed-minded and we're in a place of feeling bad. We notice the contrast of what we're modeling for people today, and where I don't feel so good. I think I listen to my ego a lot. I think I'm anywhere but the present moment. Maybe I need to learn some of these skills, right? And maybe I need to create more of a conversation and seek out tools and resources that will help me to find that presence, that sense of being, so I can really have and experience the marrow of every day. So there are no regrets. And so I don't feel bad. There's no dissonance when I'm in that place of peace, right? And that's where we do. Last thing I'll say is that I think we have a lot of work as a culture, as a society, as a world to quiet our ego minds that just will never quit. It's so restless. It's like a part of us, a mind that has like restless leg syndrome. It has like restless mind syndrome and it just can't stop itself. The beauty of human evolution is that we each find our way onto the hero's journey and the hero's path and the heroic soul's journey to realize the ego doesn't need to run us anymore. It just needs a different kind of guidance, right? And when you step up more in your spirit and more in your power and more in the present moment, the ego starts to relax and it actually feels grateful that it can retire and it can just receive its pension, right? And it can enjoy that a higher part of you is now leading and it doesn't have to be, in fear all the time. And it can actually see that your spirit knows how to lead your life pretty well. So I want to thank you, Lacy, for joining me in this conversation today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm very reflective just in this now moment, in this now hour of talking about the energy of everything that we've both shared. And I'm just so appreciative. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I want to thank our listeners who spend time with us. And that's what we're inviting you into in your own life. Notice where you're not in a state of being. Notice where you're restless inside yourself or you're feeling like something's not enough. You're not enough. and just listen to who's speaking in your head. Who are you really listening to? And it's okay. We know how the ego works. We know what its issues are. But it's really powerful when you can have compassion for your ego and compassion for the spirit side of you that has been wanting to lead forever, for like eternity. And we're the ones who have to open the door to let it express itself more. And that's when our world will feel more at peace in the ways that we're being called to change and adapt right now, a changing world, right? Change and transformation is not going to cease on planet Earth. It's going to continue to summon us and invite us into this growth process. So I just want to invite you to be really compassionate with yourself this month into September 2022. You know, this year, 2022, is a very big year and a lot of energy of change. It continues to be the case. And the more compassionate we can be with ourselves and the more aware we can be of these choice points, that the more we can realize that our power is in the present moment and our peace is in that present moment and is in the beingness, and just really be where you are. Be present with what you're with and who you're with. And we will see you next month for another podcast, Fireside Chats. And as Whole Soul School and Foundation continues to evolve, it's going through its own layers of change and phases of change in the hero's journey of itself. And I find that pretty awesome and exciting, and we're enjoying the ride. So we invite you again to visit us at Whole Soul School and Foundation. On our website, you can see our offerings and our archived podcasts and blog posts and articles and things. Our inspirations are there for your review. And also you can find us on your favorite social media platforms. We're on a variety of platforms, reaching a variety of audiences. And come find us there, but you can always search Whole Soul School or Whole Soul School and Foundation. And until then, we send you blessings in the journey, and we will see you again next month. Bye for now.